Edge rusher Amontre Harris is added to the 2026 class. TCU is trying to build a dominant defensive line.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. I've been covering TCU athletics for the past 12 years. We're brought to you today by FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is coming up. Get in on the action at FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app. I'll tell you more about that later on in the show, but we start with the red-hot TCU Horned Frogs on the recruiting trail for 2026. They are laser-focused on building its high school class, and it's really, this is not an exaggeration. They have 7 commits right now. They added Amontre Harris today, and I'll get to him here in a second. But they have 7 commits at the moment. 5 of them are defensive linemen. One is a long snapper. One is a wide receiver in Brock Boyd. But Jesse Ford, defensive lineman from Arlington Martin. Carter Buck, edge rusher from Lake Travis High School. Maddox Flint, defensive lineman from Westlake in Austin. Duncan McGee, a defensive lineman from Texarkana, Texas High there in Texarkana, Texas. And then today, Amontre Harris, edge rusher from Summer Creek in Humble, Texas. And if that rings a bell for you, his teammate, Chad Woodfork, is a 2025 signee, early enrollee, and from a ratings perspective, he is the most prized recruit in that 2025 class for TCU. He's the dude that's supposed to be a dude from the jump when he hits the offseason program, spring ball, etc. And now the guy on the other side, Amontre Harris, joins him as a TCU Horned Frog, a commit at least for 2026. Last year as a junior, 52 tackles, 18 tackles for loss, and 10 sacks. And a few of these guys that they have got committed so far, like Jesse Ford, there's some position flex there, but it feels like he is a hand in the ground, more traditional defensive end. Maddox Flint, I think he might end up playing inside at some point, but good chance that he's also hand in the ground, defensive end, or maybe he slides more to the interior. But Harris, the newest commit, 6'3", 213. That's not your prototypical defensive lineman size. This is somebody who's going to play that stud linebacker spot. That Devin Deal, Cooper McDonald, Jonathan Bax, those guys, since Andy Avalos took over, have been in that position. That's where Amontre Harris will fit in. And he's shown an ability to get after the quarterback, blow plays up. And that's been a huge, from the moment Andy Avalos got to TCU as the defensive coordinator, one thing that's been very clear, he is looking for dudes that can rush the passer, that can pressure quarterbacks, get sacks, and blow plays up. And you see that with Harris when you watch his tape and when you watch his film. A consistent theme with the players that they have either signed or had committed in the first couple of cycles since this defensive staff took over and got their philosophy going is you don't run slow developing plays against a lot of these guys, whether it's Chad Woodfork, Keelan Abrams, Carter Buck, now Harris, Maddox Flint. They are getting in the backfield and they are making plays. And with Harris, the first thing that really shows up to me, you think an edge rusher at that size and that frame is going to win most of those battles with their athleticism. And Amontre shows that at times. But when I put the tape on, the first thing I saw was, oh, this dude's strong. Like, he punches an offensive lineman in the chest, and that guy rocks backwards. It does not look like it's a fun time trying to block Amontre Harris, whether it's in pass pro or in the run game. And one thing that really impressed me in the run game, you don't hook Amontre Harris. And what I mean by that is there's times when you're running to the edge, when you're trying to get to the sidelines or get to the corner offensively, your tackle, their job is to get that outside defender, whoever that is. In this case, it's that stand-up outside linebacker, and either drive him out of the frame, or if you can't do that, then what they call a hook block, which is where you get your helmet on the outside shoulder of that defender and you turn them inside so that your ball carrier has the ability to get to the outside and get to the open field and make things happen. Harris does a really good job setting the edge, which basically means he's able to make contact with that offensive lineman, keep that outside shoulder free, stay square to the line of scrimmage, and when that ball carrier, either he's able to string him out, so he's able to, run with him side to side so that the pursuit from the rest of the defense can get there, or he's able to get off that block and make the tackle. And he did that time and time again. You saw teams try to run to the outside. It wasn't happening there because Amontre Harris was able to set the edge. So he does that well. There were times where he'd shoot the gap inside and make a play in the run game. And there were many, many clips in his highlight tape where he is just bull rushing a tackle right into the lap of the quarterback, or getting that first 2 or 3 steps, using that speed and athleticism to get to the outside, dip that shoulder underneath, and get a sack. And this fits into what TCU wants to do. They want to have a dominant pass rush. And last year you saw, there were some guys that really stood out. I think Devin Deal's going to be fantastic this upcoming season. I want to see more of Jonathan Backs this year as well. But the depth just is missing, right? And it's easily explained. They showed up, they meaning Andy Avalos and the coaching staff, they get to campus, and TCU's playing a different scheme. It's still a hybrid thing, but it's a 3-3-5. And there's an emphasis on bigger-bodied defensive linemen who can take up space and keep gap integrity and when it's line of scrimmage. And, yes, if you have a good pass rusher, that's awesome. But having athletic dudes on the edge who can make things happen in one-on-one matchups with tackles, that wasn't something that Joe Gillespie really had in his defense. That's what Andy Avalos is looking for. So you need dudes that fit that description. And Harris is the latest that definitely does that. So since Sonny Dykes took over, we have seen the emphasis on the O-line, trying to get better there. Just trying to add numbers in that room, and you hope, okay, how many of these guys can we get ready to play as quickly as possible? How many guys from 2024, 2025 can we get ready to play as quickly as possible so they're stepping up and they're contributors? If this defense is going to thrive, when Andy got the job, we discussed, yes, he's going to bring more blitzes. He's going to disguise looks. He's going to have more variety in the things that he is doing defensively than what Joe Gillespie brought to the table. But there is nothing better for a defense than getting pressure with your base fronts. What I mean by that is however many people you put on the defensive line, whether it's 3, whether it's 4, whether it's 5. Sometimes people get too hung up in that. The criticism about Joe Gillespie, he's always rushing 3. He's dropping all these people back. I get that. But having 4, 5, 6 guys around the line of scrimmage, that doesn't magically make you a better defense. However, if with whatever you allocate defensively with your base fronts, meaning if you want to have 4 guys across the D-line, can those 4 guys get pressure consistently? Can they win against the offensive line that they're facing? And if they can, that allows you to do so many things in the back end of the defense that can confuse a quarterback. The first principle that it really helps is that quarterbacks that are uncomfortable, if you're getting them off their spot, if you're making them move around, if you're sacking them, if you're making them see ghost, all of that is going to help you defensively because there is nothing that throws the rhythm, the timing, just the general flow of the offense off more than pressuring a quarterback. But if you're able to do it in your base fronts with, the 4 or 5 guys that you have on the D-line, then it makes everything on your defense better. So that's their goal right now, and they're taking a step towards it again with Amontre Harris. I don't know if JaMarkus McFarland just wants to take a vacation in the spring and summer. I say that jokingly, but he's been a busy man. He is getting after it, trying to find guys who can do this He's a 3-star prospect, according to 247 Sports. Good offer list, though. SMU, Houston, Tulsa. This is another one of those guys that was at the big junior day a couple weekends ago. And if you put up double-digit sacks at 6A level, especially in the Houston area, that means something. That is real deal production. I'm excited about this pickup. Another commit for the 2026 class. When we come back, speaking of prospects, does TCU have a first-round pick at the Senior Bowl right now? We'll talk about that next round. Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day. Super Bowl 59 is here. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. 2 teams, endless possibilities. There's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or even betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get in on the action with live betting all game long. You can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Chiefs and Eagles. It's happening in a couple weeks. Get in on the action at FanDuel.com or try out the FanDuel app. So Senior Bowl happening right now, and the game will be this weekend, but practices all week long. If you're unfamiliar, the game is obviously important, but really the practices are what make it happen. Like all the scouts are there, all the draft experts are there. They're looking at these guys, evaluating them, so on. So these practices are really important. Interestingly enough, Savion Williams decided not to practice. I'm guessing that has to do with his health. He was banged up towards the end of the season. I can't really think of another reason why he would do that. But, I mean, Savion's got a great chance to really raise his draft stock over the next few months. If he is completely healthy, and I would hope – you always wonder about the advice you're going to get, and I know everybody has different perspectives. If I was Savion Williams' agent or in his camp, he needs to get ready for the combine. And I think he needs to do everything he can at the combine because the questions about him are going to be about the inconsistency at times. Is he a true wide receiver or is he just kind of a gadgety guy? The athletic stuff, that's going to be off the charts. At his size and his physical makeup, if he's able to run well, run the 40 well, do the shuttle stuff, then a team's going to fall in love with him. They're just going to fall in love with the measurables and the potential. The thing I worry about with Savion as an NFL player, I love him as just as person, as a TCU Frog, all those things. I think that goes without saying, but I'll say it. I hope that he can hone in on the simple things. And what I mean by that is there are so many possibilities with what he can do on the football field. With his athleticism, his ability to make plays. We saw glimpses of it for years. He would take a screen pass. He would run through somebody's face and get 5 or 6 yards where there was really nothing there. He was always getting extra yardage after contact. And then this season, it came full circle with the Wildcat quarterback formation he was running and all the different ways that Kendall Briles matched him up one-on-one, whether it was playing in the backfield, whatever they did to get him the football in his hands. Once he did, he made plays. And you also would see amazing catches. I mean, I was talking to Tommy Fisher, who listens to the show and watches it frequently and is a friend of mine, because he's a former player and is just really good at scouting. And so I was asking him his opinion. And he was like, yeah, I mean, Savion is in some ways kind of like a bigger Quentin Johnston. Everybody had this idea in their mind when Quentin came out that he was the 50-50 ball guy. And he would do that sometimes. But Savion was really the dude. I mean, West Virginia, I remember that game in 2023 where – or I guess 2022. The season they went to the national title game. You know what I'm talking about. He went up and caught a ball to seal that victory, and it was just like a, hey, go on a fade route towards the end zone and catch this pass. It's Houston this year. Hoover threw him a ball up in the air where he just went up and got it. Like, he's shown that ability before. And obviously he can do so many different things out of the backfield. You get him the ball, he makes plays. The Deebo Samuel comparison is one that's come up a lot, and I like that. But the thing is, Deebo was a really good receiver, and then because of that, they were also able to use him all around the formation within the offense. Savion's going to have to prove to whoever drafts him that he can play the position of wide receiver at the NFL at a high level. And then once he does that, they will incorporate him into the offense in a lot of different ways. Now, Cordell Patterson's another example, but Cordell is more of a kind of gadgety guy, and he's carved out a nice role for himself through the years. But I think Savion has the potential to be both and, right? Like he can be a guy that you move all over the place and create mismatches for, but he can also be a big-time wide receiver. The guy who made waves today, though, Jack Bech. CJ Vogel, who covers Texas and is a recruiting expert, he was at the Senior Bowl. He said on Twitter today, TCU wide receiver Jack Bech was the best wide receiver I saw today at the Senior Bowl. There's clips of Jack winning those one-on-one matchups. He went up and got a great catch at some point during the team session where he just climbed the ladder, made it happen. I mean, it's incredible. Going into this last season, now in hindsight, like we heard some things about it. I remember Sonny saying that Jack was the MVP of spring ball and he made a lot of great plays during fall camp. But a couple of years ago when he was healthy, they used him in more of like an H-back tight end situation. And before the Stanford game, he was not listed on the depth chart as an outside wide receiver. But because of some injuries and Eric McAllister's suspension, according to Sonny at least, I think they probably had more lead time than this. But according to Sonny after the game, basically they were like, hey, we need somebody to play this outside wide receiver spot on the other side of Savion. And Josh Hoover was just immediately like, well, it's got to be Jack Bech. That's who I trust to make plays. And he went out there and did it. And just week after week, continue to make plays. He makes contested catches. He runs routes really well. I mean, he's not a burner, but he's got plenty of athleticism. And he'll make somebody miss, and he'll get extra yardage. He had plenty of yards after catch this year. I mean, it's not like he was just a possession wide receiver. I think whoever picks him up is getting just a dude, right? Like, I don't know if it'll flash immediately, but Jack Bech is going to make plays. It's who he is. All the LSU people, and he left LSU after, a great freshman season. But LSU people agree. All the LSU people I've talked to have nothing but amazing things to say about him. TCU people, same thing. Like, he's a great dude, great player. It's incredible how he's handling all this following the tragic loss of his brother and how he's still able to focus and practice and do everything he's supposed to do during this draft process. They're two very different players. I think Jack would do fine at the combine. I don't know if he's going to light it up or in a pro day situation. But I know when it comes to running routes, catching the ball, making plays as a wide receiver, he's going to thrive in that environment. And somebody's getting themselves a great player whenever they select Jack Bech. And TCU, just to be real about it, they could use some help at the wide receiver spot in the NFL. It would be fantastic if one of these guys could break through. We saw Quentin Johnson had a really good sophomore season, but he also still had some key drops. And unfortunately, I think that played into the narrative that was already there, and that still dominated a lot of the conversation, even though he bounced back in a big way this past year. I do believe there's potential for both Quentin Johnson and Jack Bech to be really good NFL players. They're going to do it in different ways, but both of them have shown an incredible ability to make plays. And with Savion potentially getting moved all over the place, and with Jack and just his ability to do things in the more traditional, like outside wide receiver role, I believe both of these guys have a chance to make it happen. So we'll keep tabs on the Senior Bowl the rest of the week and through the rest of the draft process as Jack Bech, Savion Williams, and others Get ready to take the next step to the next level. When we come back, we'll wrap things up. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. So yesterday I talked about quarterback, that spot for TCU. Josh Hoover coming back, Ken Seals, also newcomer Adam Schobel, and how I feel like they're set there. I don't think they need to go out in the transfer portal and find another player at that position group. I think they're fine. And so some of you had reactions to that. Wyatt says it doesn't really matter what type of quarterback we bring in if we don't allow them to throw the ball. If we bring in a QB with scrambling tendencies and exclusively use Hoover for the air raid, then defenses will scheme against the run and the other QB will have a net loss, and it could hurt the hypothetical quarterback's confidence. I think this contributed to us losing Haas Haney. So what Wyatt's referring to is I threw out the idea. This was really the specific example of Alex Orji, who was a former local guy who played quarterback at Michigan the last few years. He ended up at UNLV. But I did throw out the idea of, hey, why not bring in this guy who's mobile and can make things happen with his feet and use him in the role that Savion Williams had this past season. And then when I was talking about the portal situation yesterday, I was like, if you were going to bring in a backup quarterback, I would be tempted to bring in someone who had that skill set, had that ability to run, because you could, yes, use them in that capacity. I totally get your point, and it's well put. I think at the end of the day, this team has to find a way to run the ball traditionally. I mean, it's cool to think about all the possibilities you could have with a specialized package. But, yeah, teams are going to dial in on it. I think it can throw Josh Hoover off his rhythm at times. And you're right. I don't know if it was – I mean, I feel like Haas and his camp were not super happy with how he was used when he was in the game. It wasn't so much how often he was getting snaps. It was more when he got snaps, it was just exclusively to run the football. And they did not give him the opportunity to throw. And so that's difficult. Even if you're kind of no going in, like you're the backup and that's your role, that's a difficult situation to step into. So could you sell somebody on that in the portal? I think it would be tough to. And bottom line is, if this team is going to thrive, it's going to be with Josh Hoover throwing the football and hopefully Jeremy Payne or Nate Palmer, Trent Battle stepping up and running the ball effectively. This offensive line opening up, space for them to run and churn out first downs and set yourself up in second and third and manageable more often so that you have the whole playbook at your disposal and you don't have to get so laser focused in on, what are we going to do in the pass game to move the chains and try to keep the drive alive. Off Track says, I feel like we talk about quarterback situations because we had an abysmal running game last year. A mobile QB would have helped, but no one goes into the season thinking we're going to rush for 50 yards a game. If Hoover was in 2nd and 5 consistently, the offensive schematics would change drastically. If we're put in last year's position again, you need to make a change at head coach and definitely on the O-line spot. Browse and Hoover are bright spots in my mind with all the cards they have been handed to them. I agree with a lot of that. Now, I do wonder, I think at a certain point, you have to consider, okay, how much of this is personnel and how much of it is scheme preference? After this will be year 3 with Kendall Briles. He has not run the ball much in his first 2 seasons. I think that's largely because of the personnel he's been granted. But in year 3, hopefully we see a change in their tendencies and what they're trying to do running the ball. However, yes, it's not an ideal situation when you can't run the ball effectively on early downs and when you have to come up with some creative kind of gadgety situation to solve it. And bringing in a mobile QB doesn't solve all your issues. I'm just kind of thinking if it does turn out to be another year where you sort of need a stopgap in that regard and having a balanced offense, it's another tool you could have in your tool bag. And the way college rosters are constructed now, I feel like you have to prepare for everything as much as you can. Even if you're not going to use a guy, you need to be ready in case something comes up and it's like, all right, well, we're still having issues running the ball. We need to find a way to move the chains by other means. And you hope that's not the case, but we'll have to see once the season starts. We'll be back tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in today. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.